right? Yeah, so today we are gonna do a short webinar, but I hope it's gonna be very interesting to all of you. Most of the people who have registered, and we do have a big audience, and I'm very happy about it. So thank you everyone for joining. For those of you who need to disconnect earlier, or for those who didn't have the chance to connect, but registered for the webinar, there's going to be a recording available, so you'll be able to watch the webinar later as well. Petra already mentioned, if you have any questions about anything we talk about or something we forgot to mention, please feel free to ask questions and write them in the chat, or write to us, contact us after the webinar. So I'm very happy that today we're going to talk about aosphere, and it's not going to be us that's going to do all the talking. It's going to be Claire. Claire is our dear guest, and I will do a short introduction, but Claire is more relevant and will be able to do probably a much better introduction and introduce herself and the company. So Claire is qualified as a lawyer in 1995 and is an executive director at aosphere. aosphere is an affiliate of international legal practice of Allen & Overy. And Claire is head of the group for online regulatory and data privacy subscription services. So she was instrumental in designing Rule Finder Data Privacy. We're going to talk about Rule Finder, which is the product of aosphere, which we are going to integrate into Data Privacy Manager. And it provides practical curated guidance on privacy rules in over 100 jurisdictions, and manages the team of senior lawyers who maintain and develop the service. So Claire has a keen interest in using technology to deliver legal information and has coded a number of the aosphere applications founded on the aosphere platform. And she is a regular speaker on compliance and regulatory topics, and I think the right person to talk about all things privacy, especially when it comes to complex international environments. So Claire, if you don't mind, please let everybody know where are you, how are you, and maybe you can correct anything I mentioned and was not correct.
Thanks, Marijan and Petra, and hello everyone. Thanks for making the time today. And you got that completely correct. That was a perfect introduction. Thank you. So yes, we are. I'm part of the online legal information unit of Allen & Overy. And what we do is a bit different to a regular law firm. We provide online legal analysis of data privacy rules and regulations around the world. And our aim really is to mean that you have a resource where, if you grapple with trying to understand data privacy rules around the world or keep up with them, we have a quality, up-to-date, detailed resource that's available to you 24/7. So I thought what we could do today is I'm going to give you a quick live demonstration of the solution, but before I do that, I thought it might be handy just to sort of orientate you first on, some of the kind of bigger issues in terms of the challenges and how our solution meets those challenges. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Hopefully you can see that slide. And
yeah, okay.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, really what we're about is legal analysis of data privacy regulation. And if you are in the world of working across multiple jurisdictions, you will know, of course, that identifying what the rules are is a challenge. There isn't a single rule book, even in Europe, with where GDPR is supposed to be a single rule book. Actually, there's some important differences across member states. And then when you become, when you move outside Europe, the rules can be, completely different. Sometimes they are standalone rules. Sometimes they are a patchwork of sort of sector specific and historic rules. So kind of identifying the rules is a challenge. And then having identified them, then of course we all know it's a super dynamic area in terms of regulatory change. And so keeping on top of how the rules are or might or have changed, I think is another key challenge that we see folks struggling with. And then sort of maybe the third one, certainly for some folks, they say, well, I'm really familiar with a kind of baseline legal standard. It might be GDPR, let's say. And now I'm moving into other areas around the world. I want to know where the differences are, where the banana skins are, where I may need to do more or less sometimes in terms of complying with those local rules. So we see our customers grappling with those issues in a number of different ways, and some of these may resonate with people on the call. The first solution, of course, is to go to local lawyers around the world and ask them what the rules are and how they apply to your particular situation. It's expensive, it's time consuming, and that advice goes out of date. So when you want to look at it a year later, you have to get it refreshed. I think the second strategy that is a great strategy if you've got one of these people is a kind of guru strategy, where you've got a sort of clever person in your organization who somehow knows this stuff. Maybe they've been exposed in a previous organization. And that's great. Of course, they also need to try and keep up to date in a fast-paced changing environment. And if they leave, if you're kind of pinning it on a particular person rather than a system or systemized solution, if they leave, then your knowledge base can go with them. I think the third way that people do it, and we all do this, is, to Google the answer. And of course, there's a whole internet of information out there. For me, I do this all the time, but for me, what I notice when I do it is you don't really know how good the information was when it was first written. And you don't know if it's up to date because things change so rapidly. So the same problems, really. My fourth little diagram there on that slide, I guess, is a bit of a variation, which is law firm bulletins. You may subscribe to them. You might find them coming into your inbox, and usually the information in those is pretty good quality, but it may not cover your issue. It may not cover your jurisdiction. It's a bit kind of hit and miss in terms of solving your problem. So to us, and we've been doing these sorts of solutions for 20 years now in other sort of repeat legal pain points in terms of multi-jurisdictional compliance around the world. So it always, we think that the best, most cost-effective way of dealing with this is a solution, a kind of online legal database. So that is what we do. That is our product, Rule Finder Data Privacy. But we are not the only provider of online legal information in the market, and some of you may already use another provider, or you may have looked at solutions. So before I jump into the demo, what I wanted to do really for you was to just sort of flag up front some of the things that we think differentiate Rule Finder Data Privacy from other tools that are on the market, and actually how it helps address those problems that I mentioned in the previous slide. And I think the first and the most important thing is around the content. We use leading local counsel to create and maintain our information. It might be A&O offices, or it might be other sort of top drawer lawyers around the world. And we pay for that content. We don't we don't ask for sort of freebie promo content. We pay for it. It costs us millions of pounds to sort of create and maintain that content. And because we pay for it, we can really call the shots in terms of what the content covers. And so when you look at our content, you will find the same issues covered in every jurisdiction in a completely consistent way. You won't find that if you look at, the Netherlands, there's lots and lots of information, but then if you go to Argentina, there's a couple of lines, as you will always get the answer that across every jurisdiction. We have a lot of detail, which I will show you in the live demo. That is not because, we know that people don't have time to read lots of detail, but if you need to get into an issue, it's there. And we present our information by layering it. So a quick and easy answer where we can do that. And then if you want to get into the detail, there really is a lot. And I'll show you that in the demo.
Claire, may I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah, of course you may. Yeah.
And ask you a question.
Go
a
for
lot
it.
of people, when they hear Allen and Overy, it's a brand name, they know this is serious business. And aosphere as an affiliate of Allen and Overy. So maybe if you can just explain what is the connection, how you operate.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Essentially, we are part of Allen and Overy. We're organised internally slightly differently. We're organised in terms of the way we're set up in a different business unit. But when I go into the office, I work in Allen and Overy's office in London. We work closely with the practice group in London and around the world. So it's just organised a little bit differently because what we do is a bit different to the rest of the firm. The rest of the firm does bespoke advice on a time cost basis, and we provide generic information on a subscription basis. So it's really just a different way that that A&O provides information. So I guess, so that customers have got a kind of menu of options in terms of what they want and the price that they want to pay.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And thank you for the explanation.
Yeah,
that's very clear.
No worries, no worries. And actually, it sort of brings me into point 2, really, which is we are lawyers. There's quite a few lawyers on the data privacy team are, A&O transactional lawyers, A&O data privacy lawyers, or they've been in-house at other organizations. And we have a dedicated team of lawyers who look after the content. We don't get people to do it in their spare time between transactions. That's another difference, really. We're dedicated to this product, whereas other lawyers kind of across on the 5th floor from where I sit, they're working on transactions. We don't do transactions. All we do is aosphere content. And I think that really, I hope that I'll show you that feeds through in terms of the disciplined approach to the content. My team of lawyers, they look after the content in terms of the surveys, but also we update all this stuff daily. As I mentioned, it's super fast changing. And we don't wait for lawyers around the world to remember to tell us that there's been a change, or there might be a change, or there's a consultation. We actively scan the universe of information every night for possible regulatory changes. And the team of lawyers that work on this, they look through those stories. And if there is a relevant change, we never just push noise. The team will create alerts, add a little bit of an explanation or an editorial attached to relevant documents. And I'll show you that in action. But I think it's an important part of the jigsaw, which is not just, content that was written at some point in time, but the kind of the daily process, the never-ending process of keeping it up to date, really. And then maybe the final point I'll mention before I jump in and show you some of this in action is, as well as a kind of core content, there's a bunch of other features and sets on the side that may be interesting to some of you. So, for instance, there's a compare function which allows you to build reports across jurisdictions and compare what the position is, you know, say versus the baseline that you're familiar with, to look across and see if things are easier or harder or the same. Version control, we have, you know, if you need to go back in time and see how things have changed, we capture those changes. I think some of the other services that are out there, you know, you look and you just see a web page and you can't see, well, has that changed since the last time it was updated? So we have all that detail for people who want to get into it. There's a bunch of applications. You mentioned the kind of in your kind intro, the sort of the interest that we have in converting information into sort of click, click, bang solutions. That we have some applications that help you get to the answer that you need quickly. And then there's various trackers around privacy developments and sanctions. So there's really a lot of information in there because it's generic. We try and cover everything. And some of this might be interesting to, you know, you may be interested in some, but not other parts, depending on what your kind of particular situation is. But the product itself is wide and deep in terms of the content, because we sort of try and appeal to you know, everybody's needs insofar as we can. So what I will do is I'm just going to jump across now. Hopefully you can see that. This is the landing page of the Rule Finder data privacy platform. I'm going to pretty much go straight into the content because I've been talking about it a lot. There are some of these other assets on the map page. There are some alerts, there's the tracker, there are some of the additional ancillary assets I mentioned in terms of applications up here. But I'm going to go straight in and show you the content. We have about 65 jurisdictions covered at the moment, plus all of the US state-by-state information, if any of you folks are interested in that. We're continuing to add jurisdictions. So, you know, we're adding to it sort of constantly, really. So I'm going to go to South Korea, but the way the data is structured, all of these reports in terms of the features and the navigation and the topics are all the same. So I mentioned that we try to be really consistent and everything has information. You don't just get 3 lines of information somewhere. So this navigation structure and what I'm going to show you in South Korea, you will see the same, I mean, not the same answers, obviously, but the same structure wherever in the world you go. So just sort of starting from the top here, if you know nothing about South Korea, you can start with a quick speed read. This is just a 2-pager, which just really highlights, you know, at a glance, you can see that, oh, it's a tricky regulation and it's robust and it's got strict breach notification obligations, just as a kind of super quick top headline layer. I think probably the most obvious thing when you look at the page are these sort of topic tabs and this traffic light presentation. This is really the second layer of information. And we navigate via topics. So I'm on handling personal data, which is the kind of day-to-day stuff. And you can see this is divided actually into some sub-tabs around consent and individual subject rights and data security. And then we've got some kind of other headline topics around employment or direct marketing or cookies law, or what do I do with the breach response? So various topics that you can navigate to. It's the same structure in every country, so that you can get to the relevant part of the information pretty quickly. And then you see in this second layer, we have a sort of color-coded approach. So we have some questions at the side, you know, I'm in conditions for processing here. Can I process data without consent if this is in my legitimate interests? And we can see that in South Korea, yes, legitimate interest is a thing. And if we wanted to look in a bit more detail around that, then we can go to the underlying memo, which I'll just try and make a little bit bigger for you. So this is the underlying information that we've had from local council in South Korea. And here we see the sort of more detailed answer. And I wanted to just show you this really because when I mentioned it's detailed, this is really the kind of underlying asset. You can see obviously that everything is fully cited, and that really there is a lot of detail here if you need to get into it. I mean, it is a good cure for insomnia, so I don't necessarily recommend it as light reading by the beach. But if you need to get into it, it's all there. I think you might be able to see at the top here, this particular memo from local council is 124 pages. So with all the links to the regulatory guidance and all the citations. So if you need to get into it, it's there. And actually just in terms of layers, that's really the third layer, that survey. And I'll just mention while I'm just finishing off on layers, the kind of final layer, which is the sources of law. So they're all sort of grouped and linked here in terms of useful links and sources of law. So if you go, right, I want to look at the original source of the law and get right into that deep layer, that's there for you too. So that's really the way that the product is structured. If I move across, I'm certainly not going to look at all of these tabs, so don't panic, but I wanted to just drop into consent, really to just hopefully illustrate to you how we try and sort of go the extra mile and get local council off the fence and giving us some practical information in terms of, what does this mean? What do I have to do? So in terms of requesting consent, do you have to do it in writing? Is there a particular language requirement? What about if I'm giving incentives in return for consent? Is that really consent if I've sort of, given you something in return for it? How do people indicate consent? What about pre-tick boxes, empty tick boxes, clicking continue in a browser? So, really trying to explore the topic of consent in practical scenarios with color-coded answers and everything underpinned by the survey. That is essentially how the product looks. I'm going to just move on here now to data security. And actually what I wanted to show you here is just a sort of, it's that compare feature that I mentioned. And some of our customers really love this. If this is in your world, this may appeal to you. But let's say that I want to look at data security, or it could be any of those traffic light points that I've shown you. If I want to compare the position across jurisdictions of my choice, I've just picked the whole of the Asia region. I can compare that across jurisdictions. And I know this is probably a little bit small for you to see, but hopefully you can see from the colours that actually the position is quite varied across Asia in relation to this particular point. I mean, everybody has a general requirement to keep data secure, but in terms of specifically what has the regulator said, actually, some jurisdictions there are particular requirements, and in other jurisdictions the regulator hasn't really said anything. So that's kind of the detail, and we try and go the extra mile, and the compare function here is just a sort of cool bit of platform functionality that as I mentioned, some customers sort of particularly like. So I think I'm going to go back to the map page now. I think there's a lot more that I could say about the content, but I think I've probably said enough in terms of layers and color coding and where all that detail is. I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes actually showing you one or two of the other features and sort of just going back to some of the points I made earlier about, having got the laws, there in that South Korea report, there's the survey, there's all the detail, that's the law currently. What about changes? Here on the homepage, these are our very most recent alerts. You can see these are the things we've published in the last sort of week or so. And these are actually what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll move. All these alerts are kind of warehoused on our site. So I'm going to just sort of open one up here. We color code them actually. We impact color code them. So green, these alerts are sort of FYI. They might be consultations. They're not, you know, stop everything. The yellow ones we think are sort of rather more impactful. And the red ones we think are, you know, actually this is an important development that's happening right now. And so here is, I'm just going to open this one. It's just an example of the sort of curation around the topics that our legal team add. So, you know, there's some nice little summaries of the key provisions and some links to the particular, this is about new data privacy laws coming in a couple of states in the US, links and so on. So we really try and you know, curate those alerts for you so that you can keep up to date. They're all on the website. They're also at the top of each country report, so that if you're in South Korea, you can see the alerts that relate to South Korea. And you can also have them in your inbox if you want to. You can just configure your preferences. These are mine, and you can see that I'm interested in receiving everything in my inbox. But if you are only interested in, say, European developments, then you could just have those come into your inbox. So again, some people who kind of particularly worry about keeping on top of developments like this feature. And of course, you can search for them by date range and topic and all of that sort of good stuff as well.
And Claire, if I may add to what you said, with everyone who is in privacy and who wants to know all the news, we are getting so many notifications and so much information all the time from all the different sources, some of them being free, some of them being paid for. Is the rule finder notifications and information that you curate and send out, is this the one source to replace them all? Is this something we can rely on?
That's what we try to be, Marijan. We try to publish relevant, curated information daily. I mean, you're exactly right. Some customers say, you know, oh my gosh, I come in the morning and my inbox is full of stuff from all sorts of different law firms, and I feel like I have to read it because there might be something there that's relevant, but I can't cope. This is, you know, we do cover a lot of jurisdictions. Some may not be relevant for you, so you can just screen those out, and you could elect to have, you know, relevant ones coming into your inbox and just leave other stuff on the website. But yeah, absolutely. We, you know, some of our, I find actually particularly at the kind of more senior levels in organizations, people love the alerts. They say, you know, we're kind of good with the laws currently, but I really worry about what's coming. And I think the difference between our service and some of the other things there is the sort of curation that I mentioned, and the fact that we don't just shove everything out. It's these alerts are published by people in the team who are completely familiar with the content, and they're able to say, yes, this is relevant to the content and all of this stuff isn't, so I won't clutter up your inbox.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm just conscious of time because there's so much content. I could really talk a lot about it, and I'm going to try not to. These daily alerts, they're consolidated into a tracker. I won't open it now, but it's by themes. So if you want to know big picture, what are the regulatory themes in a jurisdiction, what's going on in Australia, there's a tracker there that sort of pulled everything together in terms of themes. And then maybe I will finish up. I mentioned that there are some applications up here. We have, why don't we have a quick look at breach response? So this is a little thing, the breach response requirements, you know, as I'm sure you know, if you have a data breach situation, the time limits are pretty tight, or can be tight, in terms of what do I do. And so this is just a little thing that we put together so that you can pull information quickly. And, you know, I hope that you never have to look at all of this, but here's an example. I've just sort of pulled out APAC again. So in terms of notification to individuals in Australia, yes, I do need to notify them. If there's likely to be serious harm to them, I've got to do it ASAP. I can go down and find a little bit more information. Then, of course, I could go direct to the report for the forms and all of that sort of stuff. So that's a little tool if breach response is a thing that sort of ever affects you. And I'm going to finish with one more. This is data transfer. Some of our customers worry a lot about data transfer. Obviously, it's a very complicated area. But here's a tool which allows you to put your origin in for your data, and then your destination. Let's say I'm going from Argentina to Singapore, and just run a report there. And this is essentially drawing the content from our Argentina and our Singapore reports, but doing it for you so you don't have to try and figure it out. Click, click, bang type of solution. And so here we've said, you know, in terms of this transfer, it's manageable because, you know, we explain why we think it's doable. Here are the requirements that apply to all transfers involving Argentina, and then here are the additional international transfer mechanisms that are available in terms of transfers to Singapore. So again, if it's your world, if you worry about data transfer, it's a layered presentation of all of that survey information, but we just tried to pull it together to make it a bit easier for you to handle. So that, I think I'll probably stop there, Marijan. I hope that's given everybody a quick overview of the content and our approach to it and how we keep it up to date, and sort of one or two of these ancillary assets as well.
Thank you, Claire. This was beautiful, and I'm always very excited to see Rule Finder. And you know, this data and everything you do, this is gold. And I'm going to use the opportunity. I'm going to share maybe just one or two slides, and just to remind the audience of Data Privacy Manager, and just to give everyone a vision of what we plan to do together. So give me a second.
And while Marijan is trying to share his screen, I will launch a short poll. So feel free to just click yes or no. It will be live right now.
All right, hopefully you can see my screen. And
yes, we can.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Thank you for that. So in legit, we have a product called Data Privacy Manager. I hope everyone knows about Data Privacy Manager. And DPM is an end-to-end privacy software automation platform. And that means that we try to automate everything related to privacy compliance, related to protecting individuals' privacy and managing risks when it comes to privacy compliance. We come as a sort of an insurance to companies that they are doing everything right, or that they are doing their best to do everything right. In terms of what we do, what the scope is of our work here in the region, and we are based, we started in Central and Eastern and Southeastern Europe. Today we have offices in London and here in the region, and we are the only IT company that does only data protection and privacy. And we do have a lot of experience. We have over 150 big enterprise customers, and a lot of those customers operate in an international environment, and privacy is getting more and more complex. So what we do is we help them do the state of privacy assessment to get them ready to do the automation before we even start to do the implementation or offer the software. What we do in terms of the software implementation is described on this slide, and this is the only slide I'm going to show. First thing that we do is data discovery and classification of data. So we have one of the best engines out there to map, to discover all personal data and to do automated classification using artificial intelligence and machine learning, both for structured and unstructured data. And what is a big differentiator with us is that we do that for any language and any script out there. So I think this is like a very good baseline, good place to start with the privacy program. But for sure, it doesn't have to be. It's something that you can do eventually. And now the second step in our recommended approach is to implement what we call privacy program management. And it is a set of tools for privacy professional, for the DPO, for the privacy team, legal compliance, with managing the records of processing activities in one place, in a smart way, with data governance integrated, with ownership structure, with security, with role-based access control, with a lot of knowledge already integrated and included in the platform, with managing the third parties, data processors, and so on, doing assessment automation, for example, for DPIAs and LIAs, having one central risk register when it comes to the rights and freedoms of individuals, and having one single place for incident management tracking. Now, what we want to do with aosphere and what our vision is we want to continually make our platform smarter. So when you use a service, SaaS service like Data Privacy Manager, you want to be able to do things in an automated fashion, and you want to be able to rely on the platform to give you information about how you should do things. Specifically when it comes to privacy, with all the different rules, and I mean the whole business of aosphere is to be able to track all the different changes and to curate and collect information and provide them in an easy to understand, but in the same time very detailed manner to the customers. What we plan to do in the first phase is to integrate this knowledge, this data, into the platform to make it available for the customers of DPM, so they can have everything in one place. And then in the second step, we want to do a contextual integration. That means that all the information available in the rule finder will be integrated in DPM in a smart way. For example, when I talk to customers about consent management, consent can be tricky and can be complex. And from an automation perspective, they want to have, for example, low latency integration. That means that when they collect a consent or when they need to process data based on consent as the lawful basis, they need to know in real time what is the current status of consent for an individual for a purpose. Now, there is a lot of technical details there that need to be available, a lot of technical capabilities that need to be available on the platform. But we will get questions like, what are the rules for consent? How should the consent language, consent notice, what should that look like? And as a technological vendor, software vendor, we are not equipped to answer those questions. So this is the type of situations where we will rely on aosphere and rule finder. I don't think at first it's going to be a fully automated decision-making system, but it's going to be a recommendation system. We're going to use Claire's team information, everything they prepare on the platform to provide information to our customers and say, this is the best information available to us out there. This is what you pay for. Use this wisely. Eventually, I think we are going to move in the direction of automated decision-making through the platform. But I think at this moment, being able to provide this kind of information, which is very relevant, especially in a global international environment with companies operating in multiple territories and being prone to different privacy rules, different privacy regulation and laws. It's really going to be a big help. And we are already getting questions, getting asked about when are we going to do that. So this is a start. We are just starting to work together. We are very happy about this going forward. And at this point, I think we can move on to the questions. I hope there are questions from the audience. Claire, if you would like to add anything at this point, feel free. Petra as well.
No, nothing more from me.
All right. So I think, Petra, if there are any questions, you can share them with us.
Yes, I think you just answered this question, but I will read it again. What is the added value we get as a company when it comes to implementation of DPM and aosphere? If you would like to add something.
So I think I gave my best to answer that question. Maybe Claire, from your experience working with other technological vendors, maybe you can give your opinion on what the added value is.
Yeah, definitely. I think really, as you're going through a sort of a workflow, or, as people are interacting with your platform, inevitably you get to a point where you go, well, I mean, let's think about breach response. For example, you mentioned it, I touched on it as well. If you're in a breach response situation, and that relates to, well, we looked at Australia, didn't we? What do I have to do specifically in the context of the Australian rules? Because the rules change from country to country, and having access to that legal information in the context of your workflow, I think really helps people to make the right decisions in terms of, what do I have to do next? Sometimes you have to use a particular form, you have to use a particular timeline, you may or may not have to notify individuals. These are all crucial things to understand. And because the rules change and they're different from country to country, really, without country by country information, you're sort of really only half in the picture, I guess, if I can put it like that.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Marijan. The next question, and I think this will be the last one, since it is 3:45, is how long does it take to implement aosphere with DPM?
Well, at this point, we are just starting. And the idea in the first phase is to provide rule finder information through DPM. So there is no implementation there. It's going to be available as a knowledge base. And in the second phase, well, we're going to do a second webinar about that. So I think we're going to talk about that and should be able to show the demo through the platform next time.
Thank you, Marijan, and thank you, Claire, as well, for your time and for this amazing demo and presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And I hope to see you, everyone, on our next webinar. As you already know, this is a webinar series. This is the third one. And in May, we will have the fifth one. And looking forward to seeing you all.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.